Before proceeding to leaders' questions, I understand that Taoiseach wishes to make a statement regarding the tragedy.
Concorla, I'm shocked and saddened to hear of the balcony collapse in Berkeley, California. My heart breaks for the parents who have lost children this morning, and I can only imagine the fear in the hearts of other parents whose children in California this summer as they seek to contact them now. I want to give the Department of Foreign Affairs telephone line, which is 01 418 0200. 418 0200. It's with great sadness that I confirm that a number of young Irish citizens have lost their lives while a number of others have been seriously injured. It is truly terrible to have such a serious and sad incident take place at the beginning of a summer of adventure and opportunity for so many young people on J1 visas in the United States. The Department of Foreign Affairs and Trade at Concorla has opened its Consular Emergency Response Centre, and an experienced consular team stands ready to provide all possible consular assistance to the Irish citizens affected by this tragic incident and to their families. Our Consul General in San Francisco is in close contact with the authorities and will provide assistance to those affected on the ground. It is too early to say at Concorla to know the full extent of this dreadful accident. A full investigation is underway. According to information from the local police, there were 13 people on the balcony at the time of collapse. While there is no official confirmation yet of the identities or nationality of all those involved, current information suggests that all of those involved are Irish. I had a call at Concorla from the Ambassador of the United States to Ireland, Ambassador Kevin O'Malley, who had many of the young J1 visa holders in the residence in the Phoenix Park prior to their departure for the United States. And he has expressed his sadness at this situation and has tendered the sympathies and the condolences of the people of the United States to the people of Ireland, and particularly those parents and families of the young people involved in Concorla.
Thank you. Deputy Micheál Martin.
May I join with the Taoiseach on my own behalf and on behalf of my party in offering our deepest sympathies to the families and friends of all those who were killed and injured in Berkeley in California. Our hearts and minds go out to the families, to the parents in particular, that their young children, that their lives should be taken from them in their prime, in the fullness and in the beauty of an American summer. Looking forward to a great number of months there, as so many Irish have done before them. It is very, very, very sad news indeed as it broke today. I think all of us in the House are united in conveying our deepest sympathies to all who have been bereaved.
Thank you. Deputy Adams.
Could I also wish to express my deepest sympathy on my own behalf and on behalf of Sinn Féin for the families of the 5 Irish people who have been killed, who have died in tragic circumstances in Berkeley and North California, and to the families of the 8 others who have been hospitalised. Agus Tamajik Swinu, Nadini Bakht Shaw, Agus Magiano, our Covrone, our Achala, Egan, Ur, Bronach, Shaw. Gormagat.
Deputy McGrath.
Just on behalf of the technical group and the independent TDs in Dáil Éireann, I just want to offer my deepest sympathy to the families of those who died tragically in Berkeley, San Francisco. It's absolutely an horrific day for those families, a very, very sad day for the parents, because we all know people, we all had children that went in the J1s, we all know they go out during the summer holidays over many, many years. So it's just such a sad day for those families, and I want to offer my deepest sympathies to them, and also to join with all the elected members of the Oireachtas in offering our support and solidarity, and also our deepest sympathy once again. Thank you, Concorla.
Thank you. We now move on to leaders' questions. Call Deputy Micheál Martin.
Taoiseach, I met with staff and suppliers and workers at about midday today of Cleary's on O'Connell Street, and I want to speak to you in a non-partisan way, if I may, in terms of what has been quite a shocking and very cold and callous way of closing down an iconic and historic store in this country. There is no doubt that the workers were treated in the most appalling manner, as were the suppliers, and indeed other jobs could be at risk because of the manner in which suppliers have been treated, and indeed the concession stores and staff as well. I think it's unethical and it's immoral what's going on. I think it speaks to a lack of any respect for workers. There's an absence of decency and dignity in how this has been approached, and it is symptomatic of a trend that's growing, gaining momentum, unfortunately, in terms of a trend of a consistent undermining of workers in certain sectors of the economy. We've had it with low-hour contracts phenomenon, zero-hour contract phenomenon, and indeed this kind of utilisation of company law and financial chicanery to engineer the closure of a company at the 11th hour in a manner that does not facilitate the granting of the most basic entitlements to workers and to all those connected to the company. Some of the staff have given 40 years dedicated service, and they deserve better than this. And I would ask you, Taoiseach, I think we are witnessing probably the worst example of vulture capitalism, and I would ask you, Taoiseach, to first of all consider whether we need a fundamental review of our legislation now, both in the industrial relations space but also in terms of company law, to ensure that this type of activity cannot continue, and to send a message to employers and to employer organisations that we live in a society, and the society demands basic respect and basic decency for workers, and that is increasingly absent in terms of how some employers are treating their workers, and that the state must intervene if it continues any further. And the most effective intervention is legislative. And would you agree, Taoiseach, to fundamentally review both company law and industrial relations law to ensure that this kind of behaviour cannot continue?
Taoiseach.
I respect Deputy Martin and the way this has been raised here. The treatment of workers at Cleary's, an institution in Dublin for people from all over the country for over a century, was grossly insensitive and appalling. When I heard that news, first of all, given the fact that we were making preparations in respect of the centenary commemorations of 1916, which Cleary's building and structure survived, and the statue of Jim Larkin across the street, famous for the lockout, I think it was appallingly insensitive to people like John Finn, who worked for 43 years in Cleary's and epitomised the shock and the devastation that workers felt. Minister Nash has met with the liquidator to discuss the issues surrounding this. I might say, for the information of deputies, that the Department of Social Protection have assembled a team to meet with and advise workers in relation to entitlements, job seekers payments, secondary payments, and such as rent supplement and future options in relation to alternative employment, training and education. I understand that arrangements have been made with SIPTU to use Liberty Hall as a venue to meet with workers on tomorrow, Wednesday the 17th of June. And the intention there, Cancora, is that the meeting will provide information to all workers, including those employed by concession holders. And obviously there are claims coming in from concession holders for payments and for release of stock and its value due to them. The precise format of that meeting is yet to be finalised, as workers may be involved in other meetings at Liberty Hall, but it is likely to involve the department's team being available for referral for individuals of small groups or two small groups on the day, rather than one large presentation at Cancora. That facilitates better information being sent to the workers. A representative of the liquidator has verbally advised the Department of Social Protection that all staff have been made redundant and the P45s will issue this week. It is possible that a small number of staff from the payroll area may be retained in respect of the liquidation. I understand that the liquidator will seek, on behalf of workers, payment from the insolvency payment scheme in respect of unpaid wages, accrued but untaken leave, and payment in lieu of statutory notice. It's intended that individual meetings will be held between him and individual workers to determine on an individual basis the extent of liabilities. The Department will deal promptly with individual applications submitted in respect of the IPS by the liquidator. And the Department of Social Protection will also ensure that job seekers' claims will not be delayed pending the liquidator resolving individual issues in regard to any leave accrued but untaken. This means that claims in this unfortunate situation can be paid quickly, subject to the usual criteria, and reconciled as required at a future date. Minister Nash will be aware from his comments, Deputy Martin, has indicated that he has met with the liquidator, has advised the liquidator to meet with the workers, as will happen now. The situation here has been looked at over the years in terms of the legislation that's in place, and I don't want to give commitments that I can't fulfil in respect of changes to legislation, except to agree with you that in the Ireland of 2015 the method and the insensitivity of the way this was handled is not something that I like to see.
Thank you.
Well, first of all, Taoiseach, I take it from your reply that every effort will be made to fast-track payments to the workers affected, and in particular also their follow-up welfare entitlements. In addition, you may comment on the need of suppliers, that their particular position is in considerable jeopardy as a result of what happened and the manner in which it happened. But fundamentally, I would put it to you, Taoiseach, that, and I would say to you that we would be willing to cooperate with government in terms of this issue, in terms of any legislative interventions that would be necessary to prevent the reoccurrence of this. And I'm not just talking about industrial relations legislation, but I believe that there should be a look at company law as well. The manner in which the financial world can create various vehicles and scenarios to effectively absolve companies of fulfilling essentially their moral obligations, if not the obligations to workers and to suppliers and to others in situations like this. And there's too much of this going on. There's a growing trend where in certain sectors, particularly retail sectors, workers are being consistently undermined in terms of terms and conditions and pay. And the Oireachtas cannot stand by, in my view, and facilitate the continuation of this, and it needs to send a very strong message. Now, my understanding is that Minister Nash said he was contemplating a change of legislation, and perhaps you might indicate to me whether the government is preparing to examine legislation in this area or not into the future.
Thank you.
Well, I can thank Deputy Martin again. Let me assure you that there will be no delay in the processing of payments to workers that are affected by this outcome. And the Department of Social Protection have notified all of the local offices in Dublin of the arrangements that they are making to deal with individual or numbers of claims that come in to any of those particular offices, and that will be dealt with swiftly and as speedily as is possible. Thank you for your offer of cooperation here. Obviously, it's a point that the Minister of State made in respect of the way that this situation evolved and the outcome of it. And he will prepare a report for government in respect of the suitability and efficiency of what has been well-tried legislation. The insensitivity of it is what has shocked most people, particularly in the location in which this occurred at such short notice. For staff, such as he indicated of Mr. Finn, given 43 years of his life to this establishment, which, as you well know, was the first port of call for thousands of people from all over Ireland on their visits to Dublin over very many years.
Deputy Adams.
Taoiseach, you expressed sympathy to the Cleary's workers, and I'm no doubt that's sincere enough. But the government's also partly to blame for their dilemma. We have seen it here before. Waterford Crystal, Talk, Lizenza, Lagan Brick, Beta Cortex, Game. and others were frustrated in assessing basic rights and entitlements. And 3 years ago, Taoiseach, you and your partners in government, the Labour Party, rejected Sinn Féin's bill, the Protection of Employees Amendment Bill 2012, which sought to legislate for these scenarios. Had you supported that bill, what that company did would have been unlawful. What we sought to do in the bill was to enhance the period of notice for workers made redundant, to expedite the hearings and processes of claims to entitlements. And one of the workers today at the rally asked me, why would the government do this? Why wouldn't the government support the workers? Why especially would a Labour Party do this? Now, Taoiseach, will you now belatedly legislate to protect workers like those at Cleary's? Will you, for example, extend the period of notice legally required in collective redundancies and impose penalties for non-compliance? Will you provide a time limit within which applications for redress for employees like those in Cleary's will be heard? Will you go beyond the expressions of sympathy and actually bring in legislation, which we will support you, unlike your refusal to support us, bring in legislation to defend the rights of workers where employers fail to pay them money due to them?
Thank you, Deputy Adams. As I said to you, a representative of the liquidator has verbally advised the Department of Social Protection that all of the workers involved, all of the staff, have been made redundant, and that P45s will issue this week. And that's why the Department of Social Protection have notified all of the local offices that claims will be processed very speedily and efficiently. I think, Deputy Adams, when you look at company law, this is obviously a very complex issue, and changes should not be made lightly. I think, however, that Minister Nash will prepare a report for government on all of the issues surrounding this, and perhaps it might be appropriate for the company law review group to look at what happened here and the way that this evolved. And that group is headed up by a very capable person indeed. I think obviously the meetings that are going to take place over the next short period will bring to light all of the issues that have evolved before this insensitive, swift action was taken, following indeed the court decision to appoint a liquidator. So I think the question of company law is one that, in this particular context of Cleary's, could be looked at by the company law review group headed by Mr. Courtney.
Deputy Adams.
Well, Taoiseach, let me disagree with you profoundly. This is not a very complex issue. This is very straightforward. It's got to do with workers' rights. It's got to do with industrial relationships. You mentioned John Finn. I met John Finn today, 43 years working for Cleary's, and he was given half an hour to clear his personal effects out of the place that he served loyally for all of those 43 years. You mentioned Larkin. The rally today in support of the workers, which I and Mary Lou and others attended, was just opposite where Larkin just opposite where Larkin's statue sits, and you'll know that he went up and addressed those in 1913 from the balcony of Cleary's when they were locked out in this city. So this isn't very complex. Those workers were locked out. The manner in which they are treated is appalling. It's unacceptable. They have families, they have mortgages, they have loans, they have bills to pay like everyone else. Now, riddle me this, Taoiseach. The Boston-based Gordon brothers who sold Cleary's to the Natrium Consortium, they have reputedly pocketed €19 million after putting less than €2 million into the store. So what's complex about that, Taoiseach? What's difficult to understand about that? They've refused even to acknowledge the existence of the Cleary's workers or anyone else connected to the company. So, Taoiseach, if you agree that these workers have rights, that they have entitlements, then obviously they must be protected. They're not protected under the law, and you, I think, have to bring in legislation to bring them the money which is due to them, not money that isn't theirs. It's their money. And also, Taoiseach, would you call here today, or better still, would you pick up the phone and talk to Natrium and ask them to show some basic decency and meet the workers' representatives? Because these workers, like the list of others that I have read out to you, have been let down, not just by the company bosses, but also by the government in this Dáil.
Thank you.
I think you deliberately misunderstand me, Deputy Adams. The company law is a very complex piece of legislation. You're aware of the many hundreds of amendments that have been put into the company law bills over the years here. The company law is a complex business. The issue here is very much more straightforward. This company was insolvent. An application was before the High Court for the appointment of a liquidator, and that was approved. The liquidator, or personnel on behalf of the liquidator, have said all of the workers are now redundant and that P45s will issue this week. They are protected under the redundancy legislation, but the company here is completely insolvent. There's a different issue arising from the concession holders in Cleary's, in respect of whom Cleary's would have managed the business, taken a fee for that, and that money then lodged elsewhere. And obviously claims are in for the return of that money for the past month, and for the release of stock in respect of the concession holders. So, insofar as the state is concerned here, the protection for the workers under the redundancy payment scheme will click in, and tomorrow Liberty Hall is being made available for that purpose, to advise them of their rights, of the opportunities, and of the fact that the department will expedite the payments that are to be made here. The point I was making, Deputy Adams, is that while company law is a very complex piece of legislation, the question that was raised by Deputy Martin is one that could be looked at by the Company Law Review Group when the report on all of these issues comes back from the Minister for Business, Deputy Minister Nash.
Thank you. Deputy McWallace.
Thank you, Orla. Taoiseach, last week we discussed the terms of reference for an inquiry into the state's alleged preferential treatment of private state sector investors in general, and your good friend Dennis O'Brien in particular. Now, that someone as rich and powerful as Dennis O'Brien, who has unfettered control of much of the mainstream media, that he might get preferential treatment isn't really much of a shock to many. And I don't think he's the only powerful individual or consortium who may have got favourable treatment from state-owned institutions. When NAMA was set up, Taoiseach, the plan was that it wouldn't flood the market with stressed assets. This was a special purpose vehicle that would await some form of recovery before maximising the assets for the interest of the taxpayer. But that's not what happened. For some strange reason, NAMA has been in a hurry to fire sale assets for less than their real value, despite the fact that it was a rising market. Now, we're seeing many of these assets being resold at massive profits. Now, I named a few of them in here last week, and it is frightening how quickly these vulture funds have turned them over, and at the extent of the profits involved. Now, what this means is that the foreign vulture funds have won, and the Irish people are losing out here, Taoiseach. Now, there's something seriously the matter, Taoiseach, in how NAMA has operated. And I remember, Taoiseach, I actually checked it up, but just before you were elected to office, you said of NAMA, it was a secret society which needed an injection of competence, openness and transparency. You were dead right, Taoiseach, but everything stayed the same. It didn't change. And sadly, the drip feed of questionable deals has begun. And I honestly think, Taoiseach, if you actually don't address this now, it may come home to haunt you in years to come, because I do believe that there are serious issues at stake. And my question to you, Taoiseach, I mean, are you going to wait for this to reach a crescendo before you act? Or are you prepared now to commission an independent inquiry into how NAMA has worked and to check to see, did the Irish people get the maximum return on how the assets were sold by this organisation?
Thank you. Taoiseach.
Yeah, well, Deputy Wallace is well aware that NAMA operates under a very specific remit. It was dealing with the largest property portfolio, certainly in the Western Hemisphere. Now, you make certain comments here. I would point out to you that NAMA is also operates under the aegis of the CNAG's office and has personnel serving on NAMA from that office, and they appear both before the Public Accounts Committee and the Oireachtas Finance Committee on a regular basis. So if you have particular cases that you're talking about, any deals done by NAMA, any decisions made by NAMA in respect of the disposal of property, and remember that their remit is to maximise value and return for the taxpayer. Personnel from the Controller and Auditor General Office serve on the board of NAMA and are quite entitled to appear before the independent watchdog here in the Oireachtas, the Public Accounts Committee, or the Oireachtas Committee on Finance. So I suggest, Deputy Wallace, if you have particular cases that you're talking about, you can refer them to the chairman of the Public Accounts Committee, Deputy McGuinness. And as I say, the NAMA appear regularly before the Public Accounts Committee to deal with issues or decisions that are made by the board in respect of property where their remit is to maximise the return for the taxpayer.
Deputy Wallace.
Thank you, Conchola. Minister, or Taoiseach, it's interesting that you throw the onus back on me, but I mean, if you want just two examples, right? The office block on Mount Street was sold by NAMA to US fund Northwood in 2012 for $27 million off market. In 2014, they resold it for $42 million. And the majority of the money was financed by NAMA in the first place. This is in a country where small and medium-sized business can't get a penny out of financial institutions to do operation. The second one, Taoiseach, the Forum building in the IFSC, NAMA sold it to US private equity firm Atlas in 2012 for $28 million. Less than 2 years later, it was resold for $37.8 million. That's a 35% profit. Now, Taoiseach, if you think that that's good business, well, I think otherwise. And they're just two of the smaller ones, Taoiseach, and you don't need me to go back to you with details on them. There's many of the details out there, and there's a lot of stuff not out there, because as you described it 4 years ago, this is a secret organisation. And despite the fact that it was brought under FOI back in April there, where actually people are finding it incredibly difficult to actually get any information out of it. Taoiseach, if this sale of large blocks of housing and apartments for less than it costs to build them today is one of the reasons that the private sector have not gone back building. And there isn't going to be a serious increase in housing in this country until you build it yourselves.
Thank you.
This is directly linked to the housing crisis, Taoiseach, and it deserves investigating. The taxpayer has lost out bad, and we're talking, I reckon, billions, and it deserves to be investigated, Taoiseach. And you didn't set it up, but you can actually address the problem now before it comes back to haunt you in the next term.
Yes, I recognise it's an offence under law to make a connection with NAMA, but I'd point out to you again that I'm sure you accept that the CNAG's office is utterly independent in the way they do their business. And the personnel serving on NAMA from the CNAG's office are there for that purpose. And it operates under the aegis of the CNAG's office and does report to the independent watchdog in this Oireachtas, which is the Public Accounts Committee, and can be invited to attend also before the Oireachtas Committee on Finance to deal with cases like those that you mentioned. I'm not throwing the onus back upon you. I'm quite sure that the Chairman of the Public Accounts Committee will take note of what you've said here. I don't agree with you at all that there isn't access for finance now and for small and medium enterprises more so than ever before. And the Strategic Investment Bank set up, and so many other opportunities to avail of access to credit that was not there before, are resulting in so many more companies being set up and employment heading in the right direction. I'm sure you as an employer yourself will know that, Deputy Wallace. I'll also make the point to you that the changes made by the central bank in respect of the construction sector mean that builders now have to put up 40% of the requirement there, instead of having 100% loans as applied previously, build on from the profit and result in a catastrophic situation under the previous administration that brought the country over the cliff. So in that sense, Minister for Finance has put together a number of opportunities where this matter can be addressed. Everybody understands that the supply side of housing, particularly in the Greater Dublin area, is nothing like what it should be. Despite the fact that 20,000 people more are working in the construction sector, this needs to be enhanced greatly. That's why Minister for the Environment was advising local authorities in respect of their strategic development plans that if they make it too restrictive, it becomes difficult to provide the extent of housing that's required. So the changes that brought in by the central bank are for good reason in respect of what happened previously. And as I say, the access to credit and availability of credit for small and medium enterprises is more now than ever before, and it's yielding results in terms of increased employment.
Thank you. That completes leaders' questions for today.